Hello, this is one of those talks about a book in the Bible, a book in the New Testament, most especially a letter in the New Testament. Now, what I've actually done, and I didn't sort of plan to do it, but having started I kind of thought I'd better finish, was to encourage us all to be reading our way through the letters of the New Testament and not just managing the gospel stories. So I started at Romans some time ago, and I'm still going because I haven't even got to the letters of John and Peter yet, but I have finished Paul, and so we get to the letter to the Hebrews. Now, people used to think that the letter to the Hebrews was actually written by Paul, but there's no real evidence for that. There are no greetings. He doesn't say Paul the apostle to, or anything like that. What it is essentially a letter to people who understand God in terms of the Old Testament. It's clearly designed to be engaging with Jewish people, which is why it's called the letter to the Hebrews. Now that makes it very difficult for us because the overwhelming majority of people who will be watching this are not Jewish and don't really know a lot about Judaism and Jewish customs, and certainly haven't read the Old Testament all the way through. That is a good idea, by the way, but right now I'm encouraging us to read the epistles and to really just take them on board, not just skim them or start sitting in judgment over them. No, we've got to take them on board and let them challenge us. Hebrews is actually a really amazing letter, and I love it to bits, but it takes a bit of getting into. The first point you need to understand here is that an awful lot of it is about who is Jesus. How do you describe Jesus? And that's a big question. We've spent many centuries trying to sort out the doctrine of who is Jesus Christ, and it's something that you get taught if you do readers training, if you go to theological college and go into the ordained ministry. Who is Jesus Christ? And you can go and look at what the Bible says, and you can go on what theologians have said, and it was something that the early church was still working out when Hebrews was written. So it's a big question. And part of that question is, how does Jesus' salvation operate? Where does he fit in Old Testament categories? Because the Old Testament was fulfilled by Jesus. It wasn't erased. And so you can see that being worked out as you go through Hebrews. And then, of course, there's also the so whateries. So you get the process of understanding who Jesus is and what he's about and how we describe that, and imagery to do with temple worship, but a renunciation of temple worship in a sense, because Jesus is described as a great high priest, which is fine. He's the big cheese, of course he is. He's the king of the universe. But Jesus in his life, it's probably something that will have passed you by, was not born to the tribe of Israel from which the priests came. He was actually born to the tribe of Judah. He's described as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But priests didn't come from the tribe of Judah. They came from the tribe of Levi. So Hebrews traces a different route. And the route is a guy called Melchizedek, who was a priest and a king of a place called Salem, which means peace, in the time of Abraham. In other words, our spiritual ancestor, you may not know that your spiritual ancestor is Abraham, but every Christian is, spiritually speaking, a child of Abraham. And so Abraham gives a tenth of everything to the priest Melchizedek. And what this means, according to Hebrews, is that Abraham's priest is Jesus. Now that might not seem easy to work out right now. It didn't seem logical particularly. Go and read Hebrews and you'll begin to see how he explains that. He also says you need to grow up in your faith. You need to grow up in your understanding. In other words, if there's stuff that I've just said that you don't understand, you need to get into the New Testament. You need to get into the Old Testament until you understand it. And then go deeper with God. And keep on going deeper with God. Don't get stuck on the basics. So moving on, we grow in our relationship with God. We have to understand that here is a God who wants to train us, to correct us, to direct us. A God to be taken very, very seriously. And you know, one of the challenges that we have today is an over-familiarity with God. If we worship with our children, we tend to do kiddie worship. It's immature. It's supposed to be immature. They're not supposed to be grown-ups yet. But if that's all that we have, we don't have a grown-up faith. We don't get grown-up teaching. Grown-up issues are never dealt with. Nettles are never grasped. Our doubts about the faith are never truly dealt with. We're just there for the children. That's not the Christian faith. This faith was something which was carried by deeply sacrificial men and women through hostile territory, through many centuries, and they needed to know exactly why they believed, what they believed, and how to engage with God in depth in the most difficult of circumstances. And so one of the big messages of Hebrews is grow up in that faith. Understand God at a deeper level. Understand how big, how powerful, how awesome, how serious he is. And then remember that that God is for you. It's quite a long book. It's well worth getting to grips with. And I pray that if you have a go, that you will grow in your understanding of the faith and of how awesome and amazing Jesus Christ is. Amen.